Manx Radio Podcasts, powered by Shore.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Hello and welcome to the latest look back at Talking Heads. Defending the island's reputation, a lack of local authority candidates, and the location of the horse trams were all up for discussion this week. Here's Stu Peters with more.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
Where would you like to see the horse tram tracks end up? As we heard on the programme last week, the current plan is to terminate the line from Summerland at the Villa Marina Colonnade. This is after a planning inspector raised serious safety concerns over a government scheme which would have seen them relocated onto the promenade walkway. DOI Minister Phil Gawn says he accepts the inspector's conclusions but insists that the scheme was fundamentally sound. Where would you like to see the horse trams located in future? Is there a place for them on the roadway, or was the walkway a better alternative in your view? Think even enthusiasts will accept the demise of the horse trams or a move to the wildlife park if the MAR ran along to the sea terminal, says Simon. In Murray Lambden's garden, or how about a lap around the Moorag, then down the Ramsey Prom and along the pier, says Cliffy. Not helping Cliffy. Yesterday, Mr. Gawn quoted £15 million just to resurface the promenade. Yes, he mentioned that in the programme last week. How long is it? I think it's less than 2 miles. That's £7.5 to £8 million a mile. What planet is this man on, says Terry. I suppose that's the cost of digging up all the foundations, replacing all the pipes and sewers and things underneath it. I don't know. Let's go to the lines. We've got Kay on. Hello, Kay.
I think they should just move them maybe to Castletown or Ramsey, as somebody suggested. We're wasting all this money. Nobody's come up and said how much are these plans costing every time they're not used.
Yeah.
Alan Bell said the prom should be the opening to the island. At the moment, it looks like Beirut.
Yes.
I stood at the bus station on Saturday and looked round, and I thought, well, I'd hate to think if I was a visitor coming here, because it's absolutely a disgrace.
Well, it's a bit like the Manchester that I grew up in when I was a small child. After the Second World War, there were all sorts of big, vast, empty spaces where buildings had been bombed and cleared. And round that part of Lord Street's a bit like that, isn't it? Yeah,
it's dreadful. I mean, that hoarding's been round on that prom for I don't know how long now, hiding that waste ground, which was supposed to be the singing and dancing or where people could go and have their lunch.
Oh, the town square, yeah.
Now it's a pigeon's home.
Right.
That's all it is. It's just for pigeons.
The trouble with that is that that's privately owned, I think, so it's not even under government or council control. Right. Yeah.
But I mean, these horse trams, who wants to get off in the middle of the road?
I know.
Old people. And somebody was on the other day saying, oh, well, there's 7 people who come from across who love the horse tram. 7? What are they going to do? Run up and down all year. 10 people. It's a waste of money.
You're preaching to the choir as far as I'm concerned, Kay, I must admit. I mean,
it is. It's a complete waste of money. If they owned a business, you'd shut it down. And the government, we're all in this together. Oh, we'll end up paying for it shortly.
The trouble is that nobody likes change. That's the trouble. So everybody wants to leave them where they are because that means that nothing's changed. But, it's like if you were to, as Phil Gawn said last week on the programme, if you were to start this scheme now rather than 100 and whatever years ago and said, right, we're going to run this right down the middle of a busy road, the planning people would just laugh at you and say you've got absolutely no chance. I thought that the scheme that ran it down along the side of the walkway was the best one, to be honest, but the independent inspector thinks not. I mean, it's not as though these are high-speed trucks doing 100 miles an hour that are going to be a danger to anybody.
Why don't they run it round the quay or somewhere like that?
Yeah, if it's important, do it
down
somewhere
one
like
side
that.
And round the other, turn it round on the north and bring it back round the other side of the quay.
Well, at the risk of getting on a hobby horse, Kay, it seems to me that a lot of people nowadays, whenever you talk about changing things around, people say, what we ought to be doing is creating big, vast open areas for pedestrians and cyclists. And the reality is that the majority of people who are economically active still use a car. And anything that gets rid of a huge number of car parking spaces has got to be a bad idea for me, and certainly for the shops on Strand Street.
Yeah.
But, what do I know?
But anyway, that's my view, and I think, I was out the other Saturday night, and we were getting the bus back, and it's like some man said, where'd you go to the loo?
Yes.
You come down Strand Street to that bus station, there's not a toilet in sight.
No, apart from, I suppose, the sea terminal's the nearest, isn't it?
Yeah, and putting the bus station over near the sea terminal is a complete waste, because if you've got to cross that road in the winter, because I used to work at Peveril Buildings, and we used to assemble there for a fire, and you nearly got blown off your feet.
People have said, people have said that that's not. I mean, I would have thought that it would be an ideal location, that the sea terminal, but a number of people have said no. Especially if you're a bit infirm and you're carrying bags or whatever. So,
I mean, it's like the government, isn't it? The thing is, they need changing, and people here don't like change, so we'll probably get this load plunged back in again.
We'll find out in September. Thank you very much for your call, Kay. Nice to talk to you today. Pauline says, put them on the seaward side of the road as per the 2012 plans put forward by former DOI Minister David Cretney. Pauline sent me those plans, showing the trams where they should be, safe beside the pavement, given the current tourism initiative by DED. It seems folly that DOI are eliminating the potential to capitalise on more tourists with specialist packages for vintage railway enthusiasts celebrating the 140th anniversary of the trams this year by excluding the horse trams running from the sea terminal to the War Memorial. And I've got a text from somebody who I expect knows an awful lot more about civil engineering than I do. The cost of the prom works quoted by the DOI doesn't include replacing the services: water, gas, telecoms, fibre, sewage, surface water, drains, apparently. Oh, right, interesting. That's going to make it a dear job then, isn't it? Consultation. Yes, they did say it was on the walkway. Anybody bothered to go and look at the plans at the sea terminal? We had one chance to get it right. Horse trams on the walkway 4 months of the year, not cars as at present over every year. Safe for all, including horses. Now horse trams in jeopardy and a hodgepodge of a scheme, says Mary. Stu, location of horse trams, wouldn't it make good sense to run them on the seaward side of the roadway, beside the pavement, enabling passengers to embark or disembark safely? I understand these plans have already been approved about 5 years ago, says Steve. Stu, I think a single tram track should be put where the herringbone parking is at the moment, next to the curb, and parking put on the other side of the road. Most of all, I wish they'd just get on with it, says Roz. Thanks, Roz. Cutting horse trams like cutting running track at the NSC halfway round. Leave it as is, says Roy. Stu, why don't they deal with the root cause in a simple step manner? A, repair the breaches in the seawall. Apparently it's still sound, the seawall. It needs a bit of patching here and there, but I think it's all right. B, rebuild the road. C, leave the horse trams in the current position. For goodness sake, why do we need such extensive and expensive navel gazing, says Neil. We would think the obvious place for the trams is on the prom roadway. We have very few trams running now that one track down the middle of the road with a passing place at the widest point, says Stan. Horse trams will be too dangerous to walk on the walkway. No lane discipline, and people with headphones and deaf people could have a tram come up behind them. Don't think the horses would like a big bell or horn ringing to warn people. Road users are looking out for hazards and looking in the same direction, says Nuala. Let cars park on the walkway all year round. Park cars hotel side on reverse, and trams where reverse parking is now, says Sharon. Ramsey doesn't want your horse trams, thank you, you can keep them. That's fair as well, I suppose. Stu, isn't it funny, as soon as a major change is proposed about the horse trams, the locals who've probably only ridden on the horse trams once in their lives are complaining the tram should be in the Transport Museum and the horses in a field where they belong. It's not just parking for shoppers. What about people who own and work in the hotels? Where are they supposed to park? And that's from Pip. Yep, I'm with you on that, Pip. You may mock Cliffy's suggestion, but if Douglas Promenade proves to be a no-go, then Ramsey Promenade from the Baths towards the former Grand Island should seriously be considered as an option. It's straight, flat, wide and fairly quiet. Yes, it is all those things. I mean, the horse trams there could complement the pier, mooring, etc. as a tourist attraction, says Tim. They should get rid of the horse trams. We've had people on the radio saying put bums on seats and show your support. That's been the problem over the years. People just aren't using them. Douglas Corporation has finally washed their hands of them. Now the government reckon that they can reduce the loss to $50,000 a year. If all of these tram lovers want to keep the trams running, then why don't they offer to take over the running of them and let them take a hit of the yearly losses, says Mal. Derek called. Phil Gorn has been advised by very high-paid civil servants over this, and he's a member of the Cabinet. He doesn't make these decisions. They're made by Bell and Tier. Have a go at them a bit more. Part of the proposals to refurbish Douglas Prom includes making the whole prom pay and display parking to help recoup some of the costs. OK, leave the horse trams alone and fix the road, says JC. Well, that's kind of what they're doing now. But to fix the road, all the tracks have got to come up and then they've got to be relayed somewhere, and it makes sense to relay them in a more sensible place. Let's just get rid of the trams. They lose so much money on them, and those who cry it's our heritage, ask yourselves how many times have you used them in the last 3 years, says Carol. Good afternoon. Here's another crazy idea for the horse trams. Put them on the old railway line from Douglas to St John's or Kirkmichael to the Wildlife Park, says Paul. Too far, I would imagine. Leave the horse trams where they are and move Mr Gorn. says Doug. Okay. If Port Sodrick's going to be regenerated, it might be an idea to move the trams along Marine Drive. Just a thought, says Claire. I don't think it's flat enough, Claire. I think that horse trams need to be on the flat, and Marine Drive has got a fair bit of an elevation change to it, so I can't imagine that would work. Stu Mr. Bell said no government money would be spent on the trams, so where are the funds coming from to run them, says Bill. Derek says, to be considered, if it's to be from the terminus tavern to the villa, how long will the single trip take in time? 10 minutes question. How many actual trams are required? Are 2 lines up and down still required? On the assumption that only 1 up and down line is required, modify the existing trams, 3 or 4, for the bogies to run on traditional tired wheels with 1 central guide rail in the middle of the road. That will guide and prevent the bogie from moving away from the defined route, while the trams will still look the same. The horse trams are pretty big, Stu. Who wouldn't see them coming on the walkway? Maybe they need to go to Specsavers, says Mike. Marilyn called. They're talking about putting the trams on the seafront, but then they're also talking about putting up a wall because of the weather. They should keep the horse trams. It's Manx heritage. People come to the island for the heritage, not just sport. Would you dismantle the Laxey Wheel on another heritage attraction? When I was a girl, the horse trams used to run until 7 or 8 at night. There must be plenty of investors who'd be willing to help take them over from government. Well, apparently not. They're an advantage to tourism, says Marilyn. OK. Keep our horse trams part of our heritage, get rid of some of the cars instead. Best solution is a single tram track, says Dot, with passing places sited alongside the pavement by the gardens entry, one side only. Safe. Car parking next to this with a barrier between, saving 1 tram track space at least, so a big improvement. All right, Dot. Get rid of the horse trams, sell the track for scrap, sack who is responsible, and remove the pension for wasting millions. Resurface the road. The do-gooders will stop the horse trams soon anyway, says Dave. I think it's fair to say Douglas Prom is one of, if not the busiest road on the island. Surely common sense should say that there's no place on it in this day and age for an archaic form of transport that 1% of the population use, says Ian. It's expected to take 5 years, and they're starting with the best surface on Loch Prom. Then we should resurface the Central and Queen's Proms with a single strip where the traffic runs now, otherwise it'll be impassable before they get around to it. OK. Bob called, like everyone says, the tram should run along the seaward side of the Prom roadway, where the herringbone parking is at the moment. That would leave the rest of the Prom for the roadway. I don't see a problem with it apart from the price of the project. If they think this will cost 21 million, wait and see. It'll probably end up being 50 million. I think 15-ish was the latest estimate, the current thinking. Phil Gorn is trying to justify spending the money on a big scheme because he says he can't just resurface it to last 5 or 10 years. Why not? They do it on every other road in the Isle of Man. Well, if only they did. Pay and display on the Prom will raise more than £1.8 million a year, says somebody else. You've also got the home of Rest for All Horses, which is a lovely place to go, especially at Christmas, and they have a tea room. If the horse trams aren't running, then the business will go down too. It's something I worry about. Surely if the horse tram is such a tourist attraction, then Ramsey would get all the tourists if they moved to Moora Prom. That from Nat. Put them through the main shopping street and join the old track at the Sefton. The flower bed could be the interchange, says Sharon. I don't see a problem with putting the tram on the walkway when you think of a really busy town square like Porta Polenta in Mallorca. Hundreds of people in and out of the shops and sitting at the numerous cafes, and the train and tram going right through the middle of it all with little or no problem, says Jim. Just close everything that isn't making money, museums, steam railway, electric railways, and hey-ho the government, and let all the negative know-alls take over the asylum. Then everybody will be happy. I don't think so, says Stan.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Are school children more stressed these days than they used to be? A teaching union says almost half of teachers believe some of their pupils have self-harmed due to stress. 1 in 5 of those polled by the Association of Teachers and Lecturers also said that some pupils have attempted suicide because of the pressure they're under. Do you think that school is more stressful these days than it was in the past? Is there more pressure on pupils in the modern age, or is society becoming more sensitive to pressures than it might have been? This text in from John in Farmhill says, to be sure, children nowadays must be getting softer. After all, in our day, we had the scholarship, the 11+, and we never tried to self-harm or whatever. Could this be more to do with teachers finding an excuse? I don't think so, John, no. And yes, we did have the... Well, I can give you a personal experience about this, about how robust parenting was when I was a child. I was the only kid from my primary school to pass the 11+ and go to grammar school. which you can imagine didn't make me very popular with my ex-schoolmates. And so I used to come home on the bus from the grammar school every day, and I had to walk through a big gang of my ex-schoolmates who all hated me because I'd gone to the posh school. And so, and I was never terribly good at fighting, so I used to try and avoid them, but inevitably sometimes I couldn't. And so I used to get home, and it was sanctuary, and I'd want to stay in and watch the telly and not risk going out and getting thumped again. And my mother said once, right, go out and play. I said, I don't want to. There's a big gang at the top of the road there and they're going to kill me. Well, go out and get killed. And if you do, come back and tell me about it. Nowadays, I think there'd be all sorts of police called in intercessions and things like that. Stu, my grandparents only had 2 world wars to worry about. My parents only had the real threat of nuclear war, says David H. Oh, yeah, I remember that. My daughter is doing A-levels and is doing coursework most nights until 1:32 in the morning. Exams are coming up. She's still doing coursework. Teachers just say work harder, says Dave. Stu, the problems are today's society and gadgets. This from Michael. Might have a point. Pupils are put under pressure, given too much homework because they're competing with pupils in China, etc. to achieve. Too much time spent on mobile phones and tablets, and are up in the early hours using them, even coming indoors and not talking to the parents. At mealtimes, texting like zombies. The next day they're tired, maybe suffering headaches. It's not the same as before this technology where pupils came in and wrote in their homework books, got changed into their old clothes and went out to play. There are school bullies texting other pupils, I hope you die, I know where you live, you're dead tomorrow if you come into school, filming the private parts on mobile phones and putting these photos on social media, causing severe distress to those affected. That is becoming more prevalent. In Douglas during the Easter holidays, a gang bullied a bystander walking down the promenade. It caused a lot of stress and was a disgrace to the island. It's pupils like this attend school bullying others, says Michael. Yeah, there'll always be bullies, won't there? It's just what's done about it. Stu, at some old schools, if you still had your own teeth when you were 6, you were a sissy, says David H. It's all very well you guests talking about the 6 R's, which apparently include resilience and resourcefulness, but what about teaching the precious children how to spell properly, says Albert. Oh, grumpy. Yeah, well, that's one of my soapbox things, I must admit. Stu, kids are getting softer. When I was a kid, you had to walk through 9 feet of shag pile just to change the TV channel. Imagine telling the kids nowadays there are only 3 channels. You have to physically get out your seat to change channels. Stu, in the old days, we used to get up half an hour before we went to bed. Yeah. Shoebox in middle of the road. We know that one. Stu, bullying is huge in society today. I have 3 special needs sons, and I'm sorry to say it's not just the kids. I had a woman with children at the park call my autistic son a freak to his face because he was making quiet noises while he was having fun. Unfortunately, it's not the first or the last time it's happened. Children learn what they see, and when they see the parents act like that, they tend to follow suit. Well, I don't know. Some people really disappoint me.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
With a local authority general election set to take place in just over 3 weeks, it seems that there's a lack of enthusiasm amongst the Manx public to play a role in local politics. At least 9 authorities will be re-advertising for candidates after failing to attract enough people to fill the available seats. Membership of at least 5 of the 22 authorities will be uncontested on April the 28th, but subject to objections and withdrawals, it's been confirmed so far that voters will go to the poll in 5 areas. At the last local elections held in 2012, there were 16 contests out of a possible 30, but on that occasion only 2 boards failed to attract enough candidates. So is there a genuine lack of interest in politics at a local authority level, or are people just content with what they already have? Is the island overgoverned when it comes to local authorities? Should the number of members be cut down, or could that be detrimental to the running of services in each local area? And our first comment comes from Jamie. He says, how weird is it that Peel has enough candidates to have an election for local government just announced now? But Phil Gorn alluded to this in his interview on Manx Radio at 8:10 this morning. They said the Isle of Man government's transparent and above board. They're having a laugh, says Jamie. Well, he's infrastructure minister, his department, and he is responsible for local government. So if anybody's going to have a handle on this, then you would have thought it was him. So I don't think there's a conspiracy in there necessarily. Comment here, don't you fancy standing yourself? You love talking about it. Well, that's because that's the idea of the programme, that we talk about the news and the happenings of the day and let everybody have the say about it. It's not that I love talking about local authorities at all, really. And no, I wouldn't fancy standing myself. Stu, local authority, you see, if I could be benevolent dictator for life, then absolutely, no problem, because I could get things done But democracy, I don't know that I'd work very well in a democracy. I don't work very well with other people, so I don't know that would work. Stu, local authorities, this is another of Phil Gaughan's follies. Nobody's interested. It shows how out of touch he is, says John. Phil Gaughan, I mean, we've always had local authorities, haven't we? I don't think it's something that Phil Gaughan's invented. Question is, how is Phil Gaughan on Manx Radio so much, says Albert? Well, he's the infrastructure minister, and an awful lot of things that we're talking about are infrastructure topics. And so we always talk to the responsible person. He's the minister with responsibility for local authorities, so it is inevitable that he would be the person that we talk to about it. I was thinking of standing for my local commissioners, but it came around so quick I wasn't able to organise it. The cost of printing campaign posters and leaflets was also prohibitive to me at this time, costing nearly £400. Also, finding time to canvass every household in my area was going to be a struggle this time, says Boris. Came around so quickly? How'd you work that out? Didn't we all know that there was going to be a general election for local authorities? Did we all not have 4 years to sort of prepare for it? I've got a great text here. Oh, it's rubbish. They come and knock on your door and they promise this and they promise that. And then once they get in, they just take the king's shilling. Oh, hang on a minute. You're talking about local authority elections. Sorry. OK, thank you. Robin Peel called. He said there is apathy in relation to commissioners, but there's general apathy in the Isle of Man. Just look at the big parish churches. People don't get involved anymore like they did in the past. Majority of our organisations struggle to attract people now, says Rob. People just don't want to get involved in a bit of work that doesn't involve their own work. It's a general apathy in the island. It's time to encourage young people to get involved. Hi, Stu, we're definitely overgoverned. A bicameral parliament plus 12 local authorities for a population too small to warrant a district council in England. How much does all this cost, says John. Problem with the Isle of Man, as I see it, as an ex-UK resident, is that no one seems to protest here. Without this, there's no change, and they all defer to government. Any member of the public is like a voice in the wilderness. People tend to get a lot of flack. The population needs increasing for it to be truly representative of a balanced mix of people. Too many old people. So what we're going to do about the too many old people? Put some of them out on the ice? Maybe the smaller local authorities who couldn't find enough candidates should be joined up to their nearest neighbouring authorities, says Jack. Well, that's not a bad idea, actually, Jack. Yeah, if there's so little interest in those areas, in local authorities, then maybe they ought to be amalgamated to save costs. If it would save costs. I'm interested to see results of the next interim census and would like to see the figures and how different age groups are represented on the island, as the young bring ideas and change. The retired don't, they just settle for what is there already. OK, well, I think there are some young people involved in local politics. The people appear to have seen through the new policy of increased powers for local authorities as a means of raising funds to provide services while protecting the scared cow, the sacred cow. I just had a picture there of Daisy the cow scared. The sacred cow of our low taxation regime. Thank you. What madman or madwoman would put their time and effort into standing for public office unless you're well paid to do it? All you hear is the moaners and do-gooders whinging about everything, not prepared to do anything to help the situation. A thankless task, says Alan. The downside with local politics is that it revolves around local authority and public sector housing rather than the needs of the majority. With the amount of island-wide bad feeling towards public sector housing, is it any wonder that there are few people willing to get involved? OK, I'd not thought of that, but if us Manx folk don't start standing for our local authorities, I reckon the foreign folk that are over here, those come-overs again, will, and they'll change our little island, and it'll change and may not be for the better. I'd stand as the dictator of the Isle of Man, though, and change it for the better for us minority Manx folk. That's from Davy. I've beaten you to it, Davy, because I'm naturalised Manx now, of course, and gone native. So I could be benevolent dictator for life, but, that's my job. With regards to Phil Gaughan being on the radio so much, it begs the question, is the Department of Infrastructure too big and unyielding now? He's dealing with all sorts of issues like the landing stage, the promenade and local authorities. Is it just too big? All right, fair question. Dictator, Davy, has a good ring to it, don't you think, Stu? Only room for one benevolent dictator for life, and that's me. Derek called the general apathy in the Isle of Man is because there are fewer Manx people now. No, I don't buy that at all, I'm afraid. I don't buy that for a second, Derek. David H. is trying to drop me in it. Hi, Stu, how many of these people are females? Perhaps females don't pull the weight. That's David H. that says that, not me. I mean, I'm not going to suggest that they spend all day in the beauty salon and getting ready meals ready for when the husband comes home from work. Therefore, they've got plenty of time to stand for local authorities. No, siree, not me. Never had this problem till government stuck the nose in commissioners' affairs, says Roy. Really? Interesting. Maria calls. Somebody said the churches are struggling to get people involved. Our Catholic church is well attended, and there are always plenty of people to help out. Good. Nice to hear. Ooh, Stu Peters, you dead meat. That's from Joe. Now go back to watching Jeremy Kyle. It wasn't me. I said that. I made it very clear. It was David H. that was trying to drop me in it.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
You're listening to the latest Talking Heads podcast featuring highlights from the programme over the past week.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Should the Isle of Man do more to publicly defend its reputation on transparency and cooperation over tax information? A huge data leak from a law firm in Central America has shone unfavourable light on offshore financial centres around the world. The so-called Panama Papers have created a global focus on the steps taken by some wealthy individuals to minimise their tax liability, and some high-profile names have been implicated, which is proving most embarrassing for them. The fairness and morality of such schemes and tax avoidance in general has been questioned for some time now. So, should we defend our reputation more vocally, or is keeping calm and carrying on the safer option? Should we be out there promoting ourselves as the responsible jurisdiction that our politicians tell us we are? Or is it better to just keep our heads down, crack on, do the things that we're doing at the moment, which everybody says are the right things to be doing, and just let it all blow around above our heads? Hello, Stu. Of course, the Isle of Man is a tax haven. Billions of pounds travel through or are lodged in island accounts in order to facilitate avoiding the required tax levy in the country of origin. This is both greedy and immoral and leads to a lack of funding in poorer countries. Please, let's just be honest about it, says Neil. Okay, Stu, there are three main reasons for using offshore centres: to avoid paying a fair share of tax, to evade legislative restrictions, or to deprive workers of employment rights. Makes you feel morally good, doesn't it, says John. And what else? Hi, Stu. So Corbyn wants a Hitler-style annexation of the Isle of Man. Why not govern England direct from Tynwald, says John. There's a thought. Yeah, I bet they'd like that. Derek called. Is there any chance of getting a bit of balance from someone? Not knocking the Isle of Man, but someone who can explain the other side of this. All we've heard all day is Alan Bell and the English guy fawning over the Isle of Man. It's utterly one-sided. Well, this was all as a result of the Panorama programme, wasn't it? And the Panama leaks. So that's that side of the story, effectively. Let's go to the lines. We've got Richard on. Hello, Richard.
Well, I'm a nearly qualified accountant. I can remember in the 1970s when my parents first came over to this beautiful island, the term tax haven was used. It's not been used since. I myself worked, you may remember there was a good book called Anatomy of a Tax Haven by Bretton Solly, or by Mr. Solly, who was then Isle of Man tax officer. Anyway, back in the 1990s, I was working as an accountant for two firms now defunct. We were required to make sure, even then, that no client was coming here in order to dodge taxation or any other domicile.
Yes.
In fact, we were required to attend a seminar, all company formation, from the very large ones to the little backstreet ones, and there were some rather dodgy ones, little companies that were trying to do that sort of thing, but were obliged to go out of business.
Yes.
Everybody from the big boys right down to the little backstreet firms were obliged to attend a seminar.
This is the know your customer stuff and all that kind of thing, is it?
We were obliged to know that if we weren't doing it properly, then we were out. But to the best of my knowledge, that has all gone now. All companies going to this island have to be, as far as I can see, professionally, have to be acting professionally and ethically. We wouldn't handle it. And there were no real tax advantages. I mean, there used to be the situation where people would pretend that they were operating on the Isle of Man when they in fact were across in order to dodge creditors or to dodge UK tax. Yeah. All that went. Right. And certainly there are no obvious tax advantages in certainly for the UK coming to this island, if that's what they're trying to do.
But still, I mean, on a global basis, there are still these multinational companies that decide where they're going to domicile themselves for tax purposes, and it's to avoid taxes in the countries where they're actually generating the profits. So, morally, that isn't right, is it?
I agree. I must say the Isle of Man isn't right, but I can name it. Well, little domiciles like British Virgin Isles, these little Commonwealth countries, you your little dots on the map. Certainly,
Yes.
there are the minimum questions answered.
Yeah.
And you can go over that. There were company formation agents on this island that could put you over there. To the best of my knowledge, that has gone, but I don't know.
All right.
There are people, I'm sure, who could tell you what little places dotted around the world.
Oh, I'm sure there are plenty of them as well. Thank you, Richard. It's nice to talk to somebody who's been on the inside of the business. Why not embrace the tax haven status and reap the rewards? Well, there's a bit of lateral thinking. Yeah, that's maybe worth a thought. I wonder what the risks versus rewards of that would be. Yeah, interesting thought. I don't know whether or not that would work or not. I just got back from a trip away to London, noticed on all the buses and tubes posters saying how Transport for London never make a profit because they reinvest every penny into the infrastructure, same as Amazon. Perhaps the politicians in Westminster need to look at what's going on right under the noses, says Chris in Ramsey. Yes. Well, as a private individual, as a self-employed person, I mean, you know, if I put a claim in for something as a business expense, the taxman would soon decide that it probably wasn't and disallow it, whereas if I was Amazon, I could probably claim all sorts of things, or any of these major multinational companies.
The Nation Station, Manx Radio.
Do manners go out of the window when we get behind the wheel of a vehicle? I think for a lot of people they do. Apparently, nearly 6 in 10 drivers act aggressively while behind the wheel, according to new research. The study also found that, unsurprisingly, aggression didn't continue outside the car. A third of people saying that they'll swear at strangers on the road while they're in the car, whilst only a tenth would do so face to face. Yes, less likely to get a thump on the nose, I suppose, if you're inside your car. I'm not convinced that it's more men than women. I often have a problem driving down from Manx Radio after I finish the show at 2 o'clock every day, driving down Head Road. The problem with Head Road is that as you're coming up Head Road, cars park on the left-hand side. So yesterday, perfect example, I'm driving down Head Road and I got to the bit just before you get to Magnet there. Is it Fort William? I think it is. And you've got cars parked on the other side of the road, so my carriageway is completely clear and I'm driving along. And a woman comes up in a big 4x4 with a bloke next to her and on the wrong side of the road and refused to yield. And there were plenty of places that she could pull in to allow me to go past and carry on my business in a perfectly legal way, make good progress and all the rest of it. And she absolutely refused. And so I sat there. And I thought, you know, do I escalate this? Oh, get a bit zen about it. Does it really matter? So actually, and I thought afterwards I shouldn't have done that, but I actually sort of gave way and I reversed back up the hill so that she could get past in a Chelsea tractor. And she was completely out of order. She was on my side of the road. But, you know, does it really matter? But I do worry that people are really quite vicious when they're inside the car. And if they did that in the street, then there'd be an awful lot more incidents, I'm sure, by people. Rob's been on, he says, I had to give up driving, but I got into the car with somebody who always seems like a nice guy, but he turns into a bit of a Jekyll and Hyde character when he's behind the wheel. I had to stop him from remonstrating with a woman who got into a parking space in front of him, says Rob. There really is a change in character in people when they drive. If I remember correctly, it's in the highway code that you should give way to vehicles heading uphill towards you when room for one vehicle only, to avert them having to do a hill start and stall, I guess. If the Chelsea tractor's hogging 2 lanes, then that's not right, says Peter. No, had it been on the hill, Peter, then I would agree with you and I would give way to an oncoming vehicle if it was going uphill and I wasn't. No two ways, I agree. And I don't know if it's still in the highway code, but it was when I learnt to drive that. But no, this was on the flat at Fort William. When 2 vehicles meet on a steep road where neither vehicle can pass, the vehicle facing downhill must yield to the right or what? Yeah. I think we've covered that. We weren't on the hill, we were on the flat by where the office equipment place used to be. Same sort of thing happened to me, so I turned my engine off and started to read my paper, says Steve. After a few minutes, they gave way on the island and find that women are the most aggressive. Did the Chelsea tractor lady thank you? I suspect not, says John. No, I don't think so. There should be supplementary driving tests for Chelsea tractors, including parking skills, says somebody else. I'm not having to go at 4x4s necessarily, but yes, I can see the point of that. Howard says, hi Stu, you're right about people with 4x4s. I think some of the problem is that the owners' drivers don't know the width of their vehicles. They can tell you how much they cost, but once on the road, this converts to, I need all this space because I'm large. I've just watched a driver travel towards Ballaquail Road on the wrong side of the road, about 3 feet from cars parked, making drivers coming up pull onto the curb, says Howard. If someone is dangerously close behind you, then you must slow down to a speed at which it's no longer dangerous, says John. Not quite understand that. Sure that I understand that. So if I'm travelling along at 50 within a 50 mile an hour speed limit and somebody's tailgating me, I should have to slow down to what, 15 miles an hour so that a collision isn't going to be dangerous? I don't quite get that. Let's go to the lines. We've got John on who knows about these things because he's a retired driving examiner. Hello, John.
Yeah, you've hit on one of my favourite subjects.
Oh, good.
When I was doing driving tests, you'd fail somebody and 9 times out of 10, no problem, they'd accept it and that was it.
Yeah.
But you would get some, and you could tell all the time when you were sitting next to them, their temperament. And when we took the forms into the office, I used to write TU on it.
Right.
Temperamentally unsuitable to drive a motor vehicle.
Yes.
Now, eventually, they would get through with another examiner, but their temperament didn't change. It would stay the same.
Yeah.
They would put on a good performance, they'd get through the test, but their temperament would come back to the surface.
Yep.
Now, another thing, and I'm not going to mention the make of car, because we'd get sued, there is a specific make of car that seems to attract aggressive drivers. They sit on your bumper, they have to get past you. If you're doing 30 and a 30 mile an hour speed limit, they sit on your bumper and in a lot of cases overtake you and exceed the speed limit. But time and time again, this particular make of car, they won't give way to you, and it's not just men, women drive them as well. And it's a make of car that personally I would never want to own.
There aren't 3 letters in the name, are there?
I didn't say that, you did.
Well, I own one, but I'm a very mellow driver these days.
Well, yeah, I mean, all right, there are exceptions, but I use the mountain road quite a lot to Ramsey, and the times you get passed by this particular make of car, literally going like a bat out of hell.
Yes.
And, but, an awful lot of people, they have no manners on the road because they won't give way, they won't let you out of a junction. You can be sitting there waiting and waiting and waiting.
I know, it's crazy, isn't it?
Now and again, eventually somebody will give you a flash of the headlamps and let you turn.
Yeah.
But people are very, very selfish.
Very aggressive, and they wouldn't be in real life, if they're out of the car. Chances are they're perfectly nice people.
You should have stuck to the make of car you had before, which is the same as I've got. Much more, it's what somebody said to me, well, you always drive them with a bit of finesse.
Oh, well, yeah, better class of driver in a Mercedes, definitely.
Driver, yeah.
All right, John, nice talking to you, thank you. A great book to read, Don't Sweat the Small Stuff, it works. I gave it to my hubby, says Sue. I think I've read it, actually, Sue. Yes, I think I've read it, and it's true, Don't Sweat. I agree about women drivers, but can't say too much as the wife is driving, says Tom. Silent suppers in your house if you're not careful. I could tell you a number of stories about Quarter Bridge. On one occasion, there was a girl coming from the south and she was in the lane, which meant that she had to give way. I was going to peel and she pulled out in front of me and glared at me. I had to jam on the brakes and ended up skidding sideways. Stu, please stop with the stereotyping. That's from Dave, the BMW driver. Well, yeah, I'm a BMW driver as well these days, so mea culpa. Talking about driving standards, I think people on the island are nicer than across, except when driving, when they're much worse than across. Could it be frustration because there isn't very much distance to drive, says John. I don't think that's true, actually. I think if you drive in Manchester or Birmingham or London or somewhere like that, I think the driving standards are far worse and people are far more aggressive. I have to have about 6 coffees before I can drive in Manchester these days. Also, the older I get, the more I realise that rudeness in all walks of life is not the domain of the young. That's very true, actually. Yeah, that's very true.
Talking Heads, brought to you by Magic Carpets, with the only Carndine design showroom on the island.
That's it for Talking Heads this week. Our thanks to everyone who took part in the programme. If you'd like to get involved in the discussion yourself, you can call, text or email between midday and 2 p.m. on weekdays, or you can share your thoughts at any time on the Facebook page. That's Talking Heads with Stu Peters. You can listen back to each day's programme in full using the on-demand section of manxradio.com, and the website's also where you'll find an update of what we're discussing on the programme each day. You can also keep up to date with that information by liking the Facebook page or following Stu Manx on Twitter. And if there's anything you think we should be discussing on the programme, why not suggest it to us by emailing talk@manxradio.com. But that's it for now, so until next time, goodbye.
Don't sit in the slow lane. Join the fast lane right now with Shaw's all-new Superfast Plus broadband. Enjoy more bandwidth, amazing speeds and the best value on the island from just £23.95 per month. So don't be left behind. Get a piece of the high-speed action with Superfast Plus broadband from Shaw. For details, visit our stores in Douglas, Ramsey and Port Erin or click shaw.com.
Love being Shaw.
Terms and conditions apply.